Zina Kuhn knows firsthand about the horrors of tyranny and war. She spent the last 30 years making sure that Scottsdale and Valley residents never take their freedoms in America for granted. Passionate about giving back to the land she calls paradise, Zina has used her painful experiences to teach us all about the true meaning and value of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Born in St. Petersburg in the newly formed Soviet Union, Zina Zovoloff was raised by her widowed mother in Wilno, Poland, at the home of her maternal grandparents. She attended school studying music, French, and learning the graces that a somewhat privileged girl should during the 1930s. At 17, she married a young violinist and composer. What should have been a happy life was interrupted in 1939 by invasions, deportations, and tens of thousands of miserable miles, fleeing first the Russians, then the Germans. During her traumatic travels, she lost both her mother and her husband. Forced by the Soviets to move several times among different labor camps in 1940 and 1941, she was eventually rescued by the Polish army in exile. To escape with them from the Soviet Union, Zina donned a uniform and crossed the Caspian Sea into Iran. She spent the rest of the war in the Polish army as a USO-style entertainer, entertaining Polish and British troops throughout the Middle East and living in tents in the desert areas of Iran, Iraq, and Palestine. After the war, she worked as a nightclub singer in Beirut, putting her life back together despite the loss of her entire immediate family and access to her country. In 1951, an uncle who was a professor at Columbia offered to sponsor her entry into the United States. She immediately accepted, though didn't speak a word of English. She vividly remembers entering New York Harbor, passing by the Statue of Liberty as a most inspiring sight. Within a year, she added English to the 6 other languages she spoke, got a job as a manicurist, and began meeting interesting people through her uncle and cousin. She often socialized with violinist Isaac Stern and Max and Ray Schuster of the famous publishing house Simon & Schuster. Years later, she would use those contacts to bring additional culture to Scottsdale. She became a naturalized U.S. citizen in 1957. Shortly after, on a vacation in Greece, she met U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Coleman Kuhn. They married a year later, and Zina relished life as an Air Force wife, traveling to Cole's assignments in Louisiana, France, Libya, Turkey, Germany, and Little Rock, Arkansas. For her volunteerism, she received special recognition from NATO. In the midst of his military assignments, Cole was selected to attend graduate school at Arizona State, giving the Kuhns their first taste of Scottsdale in 1963. They were so smitten with the desert, Scottsdale, and the opportunities here that when Cole retired from the Air Force in 1975, he took a job at Williams Air Force Base, and they became amongst the first residents of McCormick Ranch. As she had during their Air Force years, Zina plunged right into the community projects. She continually volunteered to speak on her wartime experiences and of her patriotism at local schools, tutored students in Russian and French, acted as a translator, served as a docent at the Scottsdale Center for the Arts, and helped host dignitaries at ASU, ranging from Henry Kissinger to authors Ariel and Will Durant. She also ensured that her old friend, Maestro Isaac Stern, came to perform in Scottsdale in 1988. In 1985, she took on an enormous project. Over several years, she orchestrated bringing a dilapidated boxcar to Scottsdale's McCormick Railroad Park, restoring it, then putting it on display to commemorate its history as part of the famous Mercy Train, a gift from the grateful people of France after World War II. During the restoration project, Mayor Herb Drinkwater made her the city's cultural ambassador, and she traveled to France to meet with French veterans groups to receive plaques they were donating to adorn the car as they once had. She convinced the Arizona Air National Guard to take on the restoration project and raised all the funds necessary to create the popular display at the park. Thanks to Zina, the city dedicated the boxcar in its restored glory in 1989. That same year, Zina brought another idea to Mayor Drinkwater, a big city-sponsored Veterans Day observance at McCormick Railroad Park. For years, she worked with the city to organize this patriotic event, attended by hundreds of veterans and residents every November the 11th. A longtime booster of the Scottsdale Police Department, in 1999, she raised over $4,000 to buy a horse for the Scottsdale Police Department's mounted unit. Her patriotism and support of all things American has extended into the political arena, too. She's befriended Arizona's elected representatives, working on their campaigns and expressing her opinions on subjects ranging from national defense to patriotism. For her work with the Scottsdale Chamber of Commerce, she was twice honored with its 1986 Pride in Scottsdale Award and as one of its Volunteers of the Year in 1988. In 1997, the Scottsdale Elks Lodge 2148 named Zina Kuhn its Scottsdale Citizen of the Year. At a time when others her age have retired from active volunteering, she's always looking for ways that she can help. Zina's favorite quote, one that she's lived with every day during the past 53 years in America, is from John F. Kennedy's inaugural address. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.